O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee, and he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee, and I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. Peace be unto you. Welcome, 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 everyone. Thank you for waiting for me, everyone. Y'all know we got a new setup over here that is still not working quite well, but it's better than it was. And so I wanted to just take a moment and let them get it together. But they're still working in the background, and we'll see what happens. But man, I hope everybody's doing good. This is Friday, trying to be springtime, summertime. We still been messing around in the 40s around here in Chicago and a little 50s and 60s, but I'm like, come on, summer. But then again, with all this global warming, I don't know if I should be praying for summer to come on, right? I've been getting so many calls lately about everything that's going on and how it is going to affect us into our future as a people. And I suppose it probably has been like this through the many, many transitions in the country. In the past, where people are just kind of wondering what's happening. But my guess is that it was probably not as intense because there was not an internet to kind of freak everybody out about it, But let's just kind of walk loosely through history and sort of bring us up to where we are. And I honestly want to contrast that or compare that with the instructions that have come down through us from certain leaders in our community that society has abused, has spied on, has lied on, where massive propaganda campaigns have been unleashed against these people so that we don't follow them, okay? And one thing that they all have in common, from Marcus Garvey, the Honorable Marcus Garvey, to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and many others. The focus has been on ownership. I'm sorry, you guys, let me turn this off. The focus has always been on ownership. Okay. But we got to the point where we were so interested in integration and so interested in the jobs that we were getting in the 60s and 70s and early 80s that we accepted sort of like this protective bubble that was not real. We've talked on the show, or I think you probably saw me on the modification evaluation show with Thaddeus Dawson, and we talked about valuations and how cities gerrymandered, meaning when you hear gerrymandering, that means that they drew districting lines to impact a particular community. And now they're calling it racial gerrymandering. But we're going to talk in detail about this more specifically tomorrow, but I want to lay the groundwork to some of the data that I'm going to give you on tomorrow. And we're going to get to why I'm saying what I'm saying about the senior population in particular. But the focus was on ownership. Valuations in our community were always low because of redlining. They said, okay, y'all can migrate up north, but you're going to live within this red line, and we're going to have lower valuations for the property, for the community. Everything there is going to be lower and substandard. That has carried us forward. Many of the political lines of representation went along those redlining zones as well. So a lot of times we wonder why it's very difficult for us to get businesses and things like that in our community. And primarily it is because of gerrymandering. It's left over. We then started, and I'm being very loose with this because I want to walk you through this chain of events so that we get there and you understand the breakdown for the seniors that we're going to do. I think we'll do bulk of it tomorrow, but I want to lay this groundwork. Then, of course, we went into Jim Crow. And then the civil rights movement began to put certain things in place to help get rid of Jim Crow. Okay. So there were a lot of things like the Voters' Rights Act, a lot of things with giving us affirmative action, which they now call DEI. A lot of people were looked at for jobs. There was an EEOC, or Equal Employment Opportunity Office, in many of these government areas. And so a lot of people got jobs. There was a lot of things happening in politics. We went from, I think something like 22 Black senators to 158. We'll talk about that law that came into place. All this affects us as entrepreneurs. Okay. A lot of us got a chance to move to the suburbs and we opened businesses out there. Some of us stayed in the community and opened, brick and mortar businesses. There wasn't this online presence that you see a lot of now. But all of that we accepted because we did not focus on ownership, like the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us, like the Honorable Marcus Garvey told us, like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has been teaching and echoing from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings. Ownership, focusing on the needs of people and focusing on ownership. Because we did not focus on that, Everything that we got that gave us this false sense of security was like we were just in a shelter. And now they've taken the plywood off the shelter. They're busting the bubble, and we're on our own again. So voting rights, you name it. I'm gonna get to this. and so now we're hearing all this data. Not only are our voting rights issue at risk, just like they were prior, there's so many other rights, so many other things. People who are even just stepping up and saying, I want to do something to support the Black community, and they start a 501c3 and they say, this fund is for Black students that want to go to such and such school, and all of a sudden they're being sued. So many nonprofits being shut down. And then again, we go into this, what we think is a survival mode, but it's really a coonish type of mode, because then we start saying, okay, well, let's just stop saying Black. Let's just stop saying it's for us. And then what that does, even if you do end up getting dollars from them, if you do become primarily focused on your community, then that becomes a problem. And so because we're, again, not focused on ownership, we're always in a position where the rug can be taken out from up under us. So we started a nonprofit. We're afraid to make it focused on our community. So we end up in a position where there's really no support at all, right? Or we're not really doing what we say we're doing, because then we would have to actually curate our beneficiaries of our nonprofit and social services. But we can't curate them because we take public money, and they're saying you just got to open it up to anybody. So this is how the scope creep happens with many of our organizations that end up, years later, whether it's the NAACP, the Urban League, the SCLC, because you now are forced to be inclusive and not really fix the problem in our community in and of itself, or at least address certain direct problems. It now puts those organizations in a position where they are almost unimpactful and even unknown. If you asked a young person today about those organizations that are in existence, many of them couldn't even tell you what they're for. They couldn't tell you what the Black Caucus does. They couldn't tell you any of this stuff. Because not only is the education not there, but the impact is not there. Let's say it that way. All right. And a lot of the people that work at these organizations are very well-meaning, but not understanding what the removal of that language has done to their organization. All right. So now we're in a position where we are on our own again, because the padded room that we lived in, that protective bubble that we lived in, was contingent upon the government doing right, protections from the government, all of these things that it was contingent upon that just aren't working and are no longer in existence. I'm going to pause there for a minute because the tech team that's working on this just sent me a note and said that we are delaying and freezing. Thank you to a couple of you all who also sent notes saying that. But I want you guys to think about that. So So now we go, well, now we're left going, well, what are we doing? And they've given some data and some statistics out here about thank you. Okay, we'll do that. They're asking me to close my notes window, but all right, I'm gonna let the experts figure it out. But anyway, where was I? Oh, the protective bubble, whether no matter all of those things that happened during the civil rights era, the rights that we got, we were led into this integrationist type of thing and led away from ownership and actually separation, if you will. We were led away from that under the assumption that no, you can go downtown and work now. You don't have to worry about opening your own businesses. You can move and get a big house out in the suburbs, and you don't excuse me, you don't have to worry about owning something in the hood. And so we were turned away from ownership. And now all of those civil rights and human rights that our civil rights leaders fought for and put into place, other communities are benefiting from, and we now are stuck back on our own, if you will. And a couple of things I want to say before we end by tomorrow to go into this whole senior conversation. There are a number of skills, and I talk about this in my book. If you don't have a copy of it, it's now available on Amazon. There are now a number of skills, and there's always been a number of skills that Black people specifically have and have exercised that have kept the U.S. economy afloat, and there's plenty of examples we can talk about, or even help to create new industry and save industry, okay, that has added to the United States gross domestic product and helped them gain the customers and the revenue and the consumers that they need in order to keep pushing this economy forward. So they don't calculate, they can tell us what they think our net worth is going to be in 2030. And I think that they now, a lot of people would debate me on this, but see, they need us in order to move this economy further. I think what's happening is we see the flattening of the U.S. economy. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad already predicted the fall of America. We already see that happening. But they need us because there's not enough, and I've heard everybody talking about this, there's not enough educated college graduate white males to support the racism and sexism that a lot of these new policies are implying with the changes that they're making. It's just not enough. So they have to try to figure out how to design a system and pull us into a system where we'll still be here, but we'll be under their thumb. So we won't be able to participate in government because they're redrawing the lines. That worked the first time around with redlining and all of that. But they're not calculating our resilience. There's a growth factor attached to that. There's a revenue dollar attached to that. Our survival, our creativity, our ingenuity, our efficiency. They're not calculating that. There's not enough of them coming up and to the point where they've built this economy where most of the wealth in this country is with what they call seniors. Across the board. Okay. And let me give you, oh yeah, I'm supposed to do that tomorrow. Okay. This is the first time in US history where there are more people over 65 than there are under 30. Okay. Again, we're going to give some more of that data tomorrow. So they've created this economy and to where people under 30 and under 40 don't have the luxury that certain communities or certain demographics had, where you could graduate from college, get a job, buy a car, buy a house or condo, and keep growing and elevating from there. They've almost, in essence, taken that away from our younger generation. So the call to action for them, in my opinion, is to begin partnering with somebody who's older so that you learn the businesses, so you can buy the businesses, so you can inherit the businesses, because they are making it difficult for you to even come up with the cash to even have the business, have your own business. So if you find somebody over 65, whether they're Black, whether they're white, you should be saying, how do I turn your business into a legacy business? And let me give you a proposal on how you can do that. Let me work with you. Let me intern with you. And I'm not talking about going in being a thief and stealing their business, but helping to ensure the long-term concern of the business by jumping in there as a person who's got more years ahead of them and helping them to navigate. Here's another thing that I want you to start thinking about. Oftentimes when we design businesses, we are taught to design businesses based on a standard related to young people. So 30 and under, who tend to follow trends, who tend to be the ones who may create trends, or at least those are the trends that we pay attention to in this society. And so pop culture will tell us that this younger community is the community that we should be following when it comes to product development and service. The problem with that is that there's not enough cash flow in that demographic to make that make economic sense. Why? Because the two most neglected communities, especially among Black people, are the youth, and I'm talking about broad categories here, the youth and the seniors, both neglected. But the seniors, many of them have pension. Many of them have maybe also a job. Many of them are on their second retirement. They are living longer. They have more viable markets that they support and are loyal to, but they're ignored. No one pays attention to the youth until they get in trouble. And nobody pays attention to the seniors until there's a crisis. You have more seniors raising their grandchildren because of the crack era that wiped out many people in our generation, leaving our 70-something and 80-something-year-old parents to raise our children. So we have a record number of 30-somethings and 40-somethings who were raised significantly, primarily, or sometimes 100% by their grandparents or an auntie. So I want you to think about how all of this has impacted markets in our community. So when we talk tomorrow about you developing a product or a service, I want you to think about one of the most loyal markets that has cash flow in our community. Stop dissing that entire demographic. Stop dissing those seniors, because not only do they have cash flow, on average, they have more cash flow than the youth, especially compared to previous generations. And another reason why a lot of them are raising our children is because we went into business and careers, and some people got pregnant in college. Some people had children early, and they left them with their parents. So then when we turned around and graduated from college, we didn't go back and get our children. And you'd be surprised at the statistics on that, which I'm going to give us tomorrow. But when I'm talking to clients about developing their business, a lot of them are very focused, too much so, on young people. Well, because they've taken the ability to earn away from young people because of the way America is falling and the way in which the job market is nowadays, a lot of children are still living at home well into their 30s. There's not a lot of discretionary income that they have. And so what they're relying upon is this short-term temporary income where, okay, they live at home with their parents. They're more likely to have a little bit more spending change. They're going to go out with their friends. They're going to occupy the restaurants. They're going to go out to the clubs. They're going to be the ones going shopping. But who's got the long-term money? It's not that group. So then in business, to continue to render that community worthless, the focus when it comes to goods, services, and introducing products and services is not on seniors. Despite the fact that they're living longer, that they're still here, they're raising children. You got 80-year-olds out here running marathons. So everybody's not sickly and broke down. They're partying, they're kicking it, they're shopping, they have businesses. But as long as they kind of keep us separate, then that older community will die off. And then guess what? They have never and may not ever allow that younger group to participate fully in the economy here in the United States of America. So we have to get smart. We have to get more strategic. We got to figure out how we can buy the businesses, not only of our seniors, but of their seniors. Because it's not enough of them going around to even take over and buy the businesses that are in their community. I heard John Hope Bryant talking about, he was giving to people that take his classes. He was like, look, if you got a dentist, for example, that's over 60, say they're 65 and up, and you see they got several dental offices, go to them and talk and learn, get to know them and talk to them about how you can take over their legacy or maybe buy the business from them. I had this conversation one time at, I think I was on a panel at Power Networking Conference. And I made a suggestion. At one point, to me, that was one of the most powerful conferences for Black people. And I said, we should develop some type of task force, if you will, where senior entrepreneurs in our community can come to a trusted organization and say, hey, I've got this furniture business. Is there a young person here that can begin to work with me? Maybe it's revenue sharing. Maybe it's a small salary, but they can work with me learn the furniture industry, for example, and then later take over the business, because a lot of them may say, I don't have children. Or unfortunately, if their children are in our generation, maybe they got caught up during the crack era. Maybe I don't even like my children. Maybe I don't see them being responsible. Maybe they don't even want to be bothered with my business. And that same task force can start to support those that want to go out and buy these different businesses. I know somebody that bought 3 mechanics shops, auto mechanic shops, from an elderly German guy. And the person that I know worked there for years, and he just started talking to him, and the guy's getting older, he's sick, doesn't hardly come to work. He says children don't want to be bothered with the business. And so now he has purchased it. I don't know how he structured it, but he now has purchased all 3 auto mechanic shops. Why is that important? Why is that an important field for us to consider? And I know everybody wants to go to college. Everybody wants the glamorous jobs. But think about, if the economy is falling, if new car manufacturing starts to slow down, or it becomes too expensive and unaffordable for people to just be running around out here buying new cars. Or let's say we just say, you know what, I'm not putting all that money into a car anymore. What if we do that? Then if people are driving older cars longer, especially in a lot of cases, you could do that because you got electric cars and things like that don't have these motors. They can last you a lot longer. But let's say new car sales dip, used car sales spike. Then there's got to be mechanic shops that people can take these cars to keep them running. And if they broke down, get them restarted again. You have a lot of seniors who have vehicles, gently owned. Well, if they pass that car down to a grandchild who, because of the economics and the restriction in economics from their age demographic, from the U.S. economy and all these other places, and just the vicissitudes of the economy, now they got grandma or grandpa's old car. And they may not be able to afford to trade it in, or it may not be smart because grandma and grandpa's car is paid for. So you're going to need more mechanics. You're going to need more repair people, because people are going to be staying in their homes longer. It's going to be more coveted to stay in grandma's house or grandpa's house. So you're going to need repair people to help you maintain things. So these trades are going to be very, very important. When we hear them talking about AI taking over jobs, I don't know if you realize that the majority of the jobs that it's going to take over is going to be the jobs of white people, because they're the ones with the AI replaceable jobs. But there's a lot of things AI cannot take over that we do and that we have. And one of them is, and here's another cool thing, you could take some of these companies that are owned by seniors, bring technology into them. You can help scale them. You can help make them more efficient. But let's form organizations so that these people can seek a space, so they're not running that organization into the ground. And I think we have to accept that, times are changing and times have changed. But we cannot continue to look at things the way that we're being guided to look at things. So we were guided in the 60s. Excuse me. We were guided in the 60s to just get to the lunch counter, to just get to the front of the bus. But what happened to our own lunch counters? What happened to our own bus companies? What happened to our own ride share services? Yes, we had ride share services back then because we weren't allowed in many cities to get into a regular taxi. So there were ride share networks within the Black community. It was called a jitney service. Uber just took and added an app to it, or Lyft just took and added an app to it. But we had rideshare. So what happened to the ownership of all these things that we were fighting because we wanted to get into somebody else's? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is often quoted as saying, "We love the white man because he gives us nothing." That's a powerful statement. And so we were being offered literally nothing, this temporary space, temporary voting rights, temporary or a illusionary release of redlining, go move out to the suburbs. So a few of us were allowed to move out to a lot of these subdivisions outside of the city during the time. That was to just help keep the sales up. And then once we got out to the suburbs and there became too many of us out there in the suburbs, the white flight took off again. So here in Chicagoland areas like Robbins, Illinois and Harvey, Illinois, then became these urban areas that we weren't thinking about ownership. So we moved out there, became the mayors and the senators and the elected officials. We weren't thinking, hey, wait a minute, we got a Black-owned city. Let me get myself together because I could technically make this the next Black Wall Street. This can become a beautiful area for Black people. We were running the governments, but we didn't do that. There were, and I'm not slighting anybody, any mayors or anybody at that time, because there's always attacks in the community that oftentimes impact us. And the mindset's not there. So sometimes we're doing a little too much and too many things that we really shouldn't be doing. And the psych op against us, when they do the psych op evaluation on us, they already know what we're going to do. They know we're not going to stick together. They know we're going to run the city into the ground. And then they start coming back and slowly but surely going, hey, let's take it over. But guess what's happening? There's not enough working age white people to take back over these cities. So this whole concept of regentrification can only go but so far. We are now in a position where we are separated. We got these separate territories. That's why I always say that separation now is multifactorial and it's in different stages. Because there's wasted cities that they're just like, y'all have at it. Because some of them are dying off. People are moving, people are leaving. So let's get serious about these areas that we live in and say, you know what? We can make these communities a better place to live. So if we get elected to whether a city council or the mayor or wherever in these little small towns, don't think that it's your fiefdom and you're getting ready to just cut up and you couldn't wait to get in politics. And now all of a sudden you can drive a big fancy car. And now all of a sudden you can wear all the designer suits you want. All of a sudden you finally get to be in charge. You can hit people upside the head. Let's get rid of that behavior. And let's think about how we can begin to structure these cities so that they are viable places for us as a people, especially since most of us are living there anyway. They should be saying on the news that Harvey is one of the worst Chicago suburbs and you can't hardly even live there. So we have to think differently. We now have to approach this from an ownership standpoint because we have empirical evidence that shows us that the economy and the bottom has been pulled out from up under us to the point where our seniors can't even pass down what they've worked for because they're being disregarded from a healthcare standpoint, from a general demographic standpoint. And our youth have been focused into this social media driven type of mindset that they're not even thinking about. Like, I ain't trying to run no city like Harvey or, Robbins or Maywood or anything. I ain't trying none of that. But you are, if you start to look at the trend of demographics, you are going to have many suburban cities around these large urban metropolitan areas around the country that are Black run, primarily Black owned. And so we have to start figuring it out from a political and economic standpoint and from a business standpoint, how we're going to build up these quote unquote wasted cities and what we're going to do moving forward. Part of that is recognizing those two demographics in our community that have been most neglected, from seniors to the youth. Even in a lot of those communities, you got elderly white people that are still there running a particular business. They ain't got no children, or the children don't want the business. And you can go in and say, hey, how much would you like for this business? How can I assist? What can I do? And you can be an instant business owner in many of those cases. And there are enough Black entrepreneurs out here, like myself, like the John Hope Bryants and their program. Y'all know we have program. And listen, here's another thing. I don't believe in us competing when it comes to programs that we all have where we're doing business advisory. We're all focusing on the same thing. Remember, God is very diverse. And he more than likely is not going to leave the saving of a people that he values to one of us. So there's going to be a number of different programs, and we're going to have to learn how to unite around issues. We have to stop this elementary business of, they follow Garvey, or they follow the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or those are, Martin Luther King's people. We have to stop that. That is also a construct of white supremacy. And we have to start saying, what is the underlying principle? When you want to go eat in a restaurant and you're hungry, the principle is that you're hungry. So yeah, you might be hungry, but now you got to say, I can sit down with that person who maybe has a different school of thought from me, but we have the same goal. And if you know me, I've been pushing this community unity in every platform that I'm working on. Is this making sense to y'all? Because this is happening rapidly. Rapidly. Many of us live in communities, whether they're urban communities or suburban communities, where we are now the majority and or over 75% of the population, except for some elderly business owners that are left. In many cases, when we start talking about some of these suburban areas, you see very few new commercial businesses popping up. So you're not going to see the same businesses popping up in, say, Harvey than you would see in South Holland, because it's a different demographic, different property valuations, a different ability to even start your business in that area. Yet there are people there that need to be served. And let me say this. Unless we toughen up and start figuring out how to be pioneers and build these cities, then these cities are going to turn into mayhem, because people are going to continue to steal. People are going to continue to kill. And it's going to happen more and more and more, because many of the opportunities that we can provide for ourselves, we're not doing. We're ignoring the youth and we're ignoring the seniors. And in America as a whole right now, the seniors outnumber the youth. First time in history this has happened. It says a lot about the growth factor, but they're outnumbered. And then the revenue that flows through seniors. I'm going to give some of these details, but I just want to talk this concepts today. The revenue that flows through seniors, is going to be, or is already, much greater than the revenue that flows through youth. So we have to figure out how to come together, not only from a community standpoint, but from an economic and a social economic standpoint. It starts with respect, and it starts with working together. And those of you that are seniors, that address young people as YNs and don't like anybody who's young, and you got a problem with that, you need to stop that. Because what's going to happen is your business is going to die off. Your pension is going to die off. You may not even get all your pension. So when you leave that big chunk of your pension there with the company you work for, you can't stand your children and your grandchildren, so you're not even going to tell them how to get it. A lot of cases, you didn't set it up so that it could be passed down to anybody. And that's just going to go back to the fund. Your business is going to die off. And what about the transference of generational wealth? See, we can start that now. Because despite what you see, DEI had transformed or morphed from affirmative action days to the DEI days, where Black people were not the primary beneficiaries of DEI. So the DEI that they reference all the time on television and try to create this public perception that we're the beneficiaries. Like I saw a post the other day, I think it was from Representative Summer Lee, and somebody wrote on there, like, I think I made a comment. I said, who benefits from DEI? And somebody wrote under my comment, they said, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad, would you rather have a pilot who is qualified or a pilot who is Black? And I said, show me a pilot that got hired just because they Black. Show me anybody who got hired as a pilot just because they're Black. I'll wait. And we're still waiting. It's not the truth. So I wrote a white paper on this. You can find it if you click the link in my bio. Go to the Brains article and you'll see the article on DEI and reframing it that I wrote. DEI is not something that's been for us. Okay. So I really want you to think about that. When you start talking about AI and AI taking over certain jobs, and everybody's like, it's going to take over so many jobs in the Black community and da 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 da. See, what they're not calculating is the stuff we're good at. being creative, developing new products and services, making monetizable cultural brands, all of those things that we're good at, that we've been doing unconscionable to help move the American GDP forward. DEI is not calculating that and can't do that. And the majority of jobs that AI is going to take over are jobs that middle class white America has. The service oriented jobs, those are the jobs that are going to be going away. Those are going to be the people that are going to be on the street trying to figure out what they're going to do. And so what they're trying to do is position them so that now we have less representation in Washington, D.C. We're a lot less powerful. Our youth are focused somewhere else. Our seniors are just dying off and letting their businesses go. And then they can say, okay, all of these white people that are losing their jobs to AI, we can now place them in certain strategic positions so that the people that they are over can be under our thumb. I see y'all saying some things in the chat. Let me, we're going to go about 15 more minutes, but I want to, and thank you for hanging in there with me through some of these technical problems we were having this morning. Let's see. Let's go up here to this chat, see what's happening. Oh, that's cool. They gave us a teleprompter. All right, I like that. That's a new feature, right? Brother Ronald said, such profound information. Thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you, Brother Ronald. I want us to have data points so that we can do a better job with being hopeful. Because what I think happens to us is that, see, trauma is based on data points. And we get these old, antiquated, trauma-based data points, which we either hear in the news or we hear it so much in the news that when things happen to us in real life, we're using the bad thing as the data point and not the good that is happening to us. I love looking at documentaries of Black people and what they've went through because it gives me strength. When I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were talking about having been married and somebody took all of their money. And I say, yeah, that's happening on both sides of the coins nowadays. You have to be mindful. But I'm reminded of women and men, but specifically women who have had their fortunes lost, people like Annie Malone, in a divorce, and how they rebuilt and bounced back. You're talking about the strength of our ancestors. Nobody's codifying that. Nobody's quantifying that, how they just kept overcoming. How many of you all can talk about your grandmothers or great grandmothers, and they'll say, oh, she lost 2 children, or they went through X, Y, Z. They had to escape from the South and got up here and then started a business for themselves. I want you to start thinking about what they went through and what they navigated through just to create this protective bubble around us that is being busted. Now, they didn't listen to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and many of them didn't listen to the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Many of us aren't listening to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the focus on ownership, but we have to give them credit for what they accomplished for the period of time that they accomplished it. And so instead of being critical, we need to say, all right, we're going to take it from here. We got this. Mike King says, what happened to our own exactly? Walaikum salam, sir. What is that? Elatimus 70, 75, 60. One of the main issues is a lot of people don't want to build their future. They just want to play in it. Yeah, and that's going to be an educational process that we got to do quickly, because we've been lured and lulled to sleep and lulled away from the idea of building our own future. Like I said, so much so that we neglect those in the generations ahead of us. We're okay with not knowing history. And don't think, and I know a lot of people, when we hear future, we're thinking like, I'm not going to be here, so I'm not going to worry about it. But guess what? As this country is transitioning from where it is today to continuing to destroy the future of a certain demographic of people, you're going to feel it today. It's not going to just pop up and be gone. You're going to feel it today. So we now have to re-educate and figure out what we can do while we got some time to begin to build for our future and focus on ownership like they told us, and stop leading our people into a burning building that is only going to be providing shelter to us until it burns down. See, we settled for the things that happen with the assumption. Let me say it this way. There were certain assumptions, and we assumed that the government would always work, that we could rely on the three arms of government, that we had protections that were in place, but all of that was temporary. That person also says, lock into all the energy efficiency programs. Yeah, if structural stability let me say this. A lot of those programs are gone. There's still some things happening on the state and local level that we must make sure we take advantage of. But this is what I say. There are enough of us that have worked in these industries that can now run these facilities, because we run them anyway for a salary. So the knowledge is not lost on our community. See, the decline of the educated white male has been happening for a very long time. So when you go into a lot of these metropolitan areas, especially the smaller ones, those are Black people running stuff. You may have a white mayor. In a lot of cases, you don't anymore, but you may have a white mayor, but we're there. And some people say, well, why is all this so racially driven and Black and white? Because the policies that are either being written or removed are racially driven. And then the fuel that's being put behind it is a racially driven fuel. Don't say anything about Black. Don't support Black people. And there's some of us who think that we're all that enough that, okay, I can just act like I'm not Black. They got some program for you with that too. Those of you who think that. Let's see. Walaikum salam, dress code. Let's see who else we got in here. The elders have the revenue and the resources. The youth have the energy. Yeah. So we got to get off of this Willie Lynch thing and come together. Come together. Let's marry the resources with the energy. The resources is money. The resources, the benefit of history. The resources, maybe the business. The resources, a lot of things. And I say this all the time on the show. If you're a young person and you have an older person as your advisor, you're going to have an advantage over other young people in your community who don't have that. And if you're an older person, especially an older person with a business, and you have younger people who are working with you and interested in working with you and willing to work with you, you have an advantage over your peers. This is a very important concept for us to get, and we got to get over hating each other. Let's stop with the name calling. Let's stop buying into pop culture that's making fun of elders and talking about people's hairstyles and how they dress. Keep your mouth off of our elders. And we need to be going in the comments, doing a thumbs down, deleting those accounts. Stop talking about our elders who have wisdom to share. I don't care if they do dress funny. I don't care if they do got a funny hairstyle. Nobody's asking them to be down with the trends, you know. Let's get with them with what they know, with what they know how to do. Okay. DEI wasn't for the Black community, but they used it to change not just the country, but the world with real qualification. I'm not really sure what you mean by that, but affirmative action morphed into these, what they now call DEI programs. The affirmative action was a way to allow Black people who were blocked out of government and corporate jobs to be able to get in. You still had to be qualified. You still had to be overqualified in many cases. Rarely was somebody just hired, for example, as a pilot just because they was Black. That kind of discrimination never really went away. But as the precursor, see, there's always the underlay for the overplay we forget. When they knew that they eventually, somebody was planning in a room, like, we're going to get rid of DEI. We're going to slowly phase Black people out of it. We're going to fold in another demographic like the LGBTQ plus, and then we're going to get rid of it. But we're going to say that it was Black people who were benefiting from it because it will create this public psychosis that will prevent them from being able to get anything else. And then we're going to start filing lawsuits against companies and nonprofits that are supporting the Black community. Okay. And then that's going to discourage anything being government funded that supports this particular demographic. It's all an illusion, because we only have, what is it, less than 2% of government contracts, less than 3% of new hire jobs and promotions. Let's see. Zachary Muhammad said, "Assalamu alaikum, Sister Sajdah and family. Here in Memphis, Tennessee. Okay. We need an exodus strategy from the state of Tennessee. The state has, as of yesterday, redrawn the congressional districts into 3 parts." Yeah. That type of gerrymandering, if you will, is happening now all over the country. And whether it's an exodus, Brother Zachary, or whether we have to get together and figure out what our separation plan looks like. I've been saying that we need think tanks all in every state, with a national think tank that just helps solve some of these problems. We don't have to be like a Charlie Kirk with $60 million in our think tank, but we need think tanks. Clock Doc says, "I think the creatives have a real advantage in this AI era." Yeah, I agree, sis. Not only the creatives, but there's that human piece, that human capital, that stick-to-itiveness, that innovative piece, the way that we survive, that they're not documenting. Because even though they're doing all of this because they think that they're going to put these white children or white youth that lose their jobs to AI over us, and they're trying to set them up so that they have an advantage from a policy standpoint through things like gerrymandering and getting rid of certain programs. I don't think they're going to make it. I really don't. Because a lot of them are not going to be able to stomach what's going to be required for them to get through to that process. And so it's going to be interesting. I even go into, you made me remember, I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow, from a healthcare standpoint. Do not forget the seniors. When I went into the business of healthcare, I started looking and I said, what is the most underserved and ignored population? First, Black seniors. I went to the DC office on aging and said, can we partner with you? Can we work with you? And then I said, among that senior population, who is the most neglected? The males. The Black senior men, most neglected. So we had a whole division that focused on them. I know at one time we had to have the most Black male senior patients in the country. You'd walk into our office, it'd be filled with Black senior men. One thing about Black men, they don't do a lot of shopping around when it comes to healthcare. They're very loyal. They're not like us as women, where we may have 2 or 3 doctors. We go to somebody for our skin. We go to somebody for our feminine needs. We got our general doctor. We ain't got no problem going to a specialist. We get tests run. One thing about Black men, once they get with you and it's working, they just gonna stay there. They don't like going to the doctor anyway. So if you can find a way to service them, they will be the most loyal. And then they tell their friends. They say, oh yeah, I go to this doctor over there. He or she, they real cool. They take care of me over there. And I remember watching Black men, it hurt me to my heart, crying. And we got testimonies from them where they testified on the news in DC, where they had never been treated like a king before. I remember just watching older Black men cry. They said, I've never been treated this good in my life. You think that's not a loyal customer? And when you look at the parking lot, when most of those senior Black men drive up, they got a late model car, they got some discretionary income. They're a market. And I'm not talking about being a predator. I'm not talking about taking advantage of anybody, but many of them have businesses. Many of them have knowledge and information that we all should be taking advantage of. All of us should. Okay, let's see. They want us to believe that we are not designed to be able to deal with trauma and heal. Look. One thing about Black people, we some of the most faithful, prayingest people. It's hard to get us to give up when we really put our mind to it. You have to trick us into giving up on life, which is what they've been doing. And you trick us where they put a pacifier and a distraction and say, go for this, but then life is happening over here. They have to trick us into that. Because when we put our mind, we put this beautiful big God mind on stuff, we can make it happen. We're going to survive. We're going to thrive. And it almost don't matter what you do to us. I want you to think about that. Okay, let me finish these comments before we go. Right, taking the painful exception and making that the rule. That's right, sis. Aaron X. Dunlap says, we have neglected our youth, the spaces and experiences to be a child and grow up. I had 20 options of non-harmful things to do with my life on a daily. Yeah. So what they've done is they've made us in the middle to neglect both sides of the spectrum. So those of us in the middle are responsible for the neglect of the youth, because we don't have that village anymore. We chasing whatever we chasing. And we are neglecting our seniors. So there's nobody to learn from and nobody to pass things on to. And then once the propaganda, once the psyops takes place, once the mind manipulation, the neuro-linguistic programming that's in all the advertising takes place, the seniors are just ready to die, or they don't even care. And the seniors are interesting because you have a group that's like, you know what, I'm out of here. Then you have a group that's like, it's whatever. I'm getting ready to party like it's 1999. I'm kicking it. I'm spending money. I'm doing what I got to do. And they're not youth focused like the grandmothers that were back in the day. So all of this is by design. This way we don't inherit the intellectual capital that they have, the financial capital, the real estate capital. It just kind of goes back into wherever it came from when they pass on. And then the youth I can't even tell you how many youth today. And so the youth are in an interesting position too. You got the youth who are being raised by their grandchildren because we're not raising our own children. So, it could have been the crack era. It could have been, look, I want my job. I want this international business or whatever I'm doing. I'm in government, whatever. And so I didn't raise my children. My mom raised them or my father raised them. So you have that group that actually live with their grandparents. And there's a healthy number that if you turn around the focus, that can make a difference. And then you have that group of youth that don't even know their grandparents. And the grandparents don't care nothing about knowing them. See, this is all it all began with those elements of Willie Lynch that they just kept creating propaganda around. Well, we don't like them and they don't like us. Okay, let's see. Knowledge is not lost. Yeah, on our community, ownership of institutions is where we are at a loss. Yeah, that's right. But look, when things are decelerating fast, it's not hard to take over it. See, this is why, to me, we are in the most advantageous position that we've ever been in. And we got to take our mind off of being over focused with money. See, being abundant, let me add this before we go. I may not have time to get through the clients because stuff is just coming to me. Being abundant is being able to do what you need to do when you need it. Being able to do what you need to do when you need to do it. And abundance may not come in the form of an avalanche of money. So a lot of us are so focused on money, money, money. We're not realizing that there's opportunities right in our face that don't necessarily require money. So if you live with a grandparent that has a business or has some job, you better be sticking to their hip. You should be right on their heels. Grandma, grandpa, what is this? How can I learn that? How can I take over? Because even if your grandparents' business was not necessarily successful on a massive scale that you would like, they have human capital that you can learn from. And again, stop looking at the fact that you think you're going to need an avalanche of money and it ain't coming so you can get that new Rolls Royce and all of that stuff. What about the knowledge that they have? What about that older person that don't look like you, that lives in your community, that got 2 or 3 corner stores or several businesses that you can go and say, you can go and learn from, or that you can even go and figure out how to buy that business from them because maybe they don't have no children. See, when when the powers that be are doing stuff to us, I think they forgot about how powerfully influential that we are. So when you sat up there and got us off on crack, y'all children was on crack too. You try to introduce methamphetamines and all this crazy weed into our community. Well, guess what? We are highly influential and attractive people. And so your children on that stuff too. So a lot of them have businesses with nobody to pass those businesses on to. And if you get yourself together, if we get ourselves together, we can go in and buy those businesses. And it may not, excuse me, it may not take a whole lot of money. But stop making money your God and see money as a tool so that you can do a better job at utilizing the money and you can lessen the impact of the financial trauma. Okay, one of the main issues is a lot of people don't want to build their future. Okay, we've seen that. We talked about that one. The elders have the revenue. Yep, we talked about that one. Okay, I think we hit most of these. And Mike King says, I'm 32 and I love my elders. You keep on doing that, Brother Mike. And keep learning, because you're going to have an advantage over people who are being taught to hate their elders. Okay. All right, family. I hope you got that. I hope you kind of understand where I'm going with that. Opening our minds up to being builders. Go out there and grab a copy of my book. You can go to Amazon now. It's called The Art and Science of Business. Just search for Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. You'll see my books pop up. Make sure you grab a copy. And make sure you follow me on social media. And I always forget to tell y'all this. Be sure to like and subscribe. And I thank you all for commenting. The chat was popping today. Be sure to like and subscribe so we can work on getting the numbers up and getting more subscribers. I always forget because I focus on getting the message out to you guys. And I know that there's a lot of you all looking and watching the show and the platform, because literally now everywhere I go, somebody's saying, hey, I enjoyed that show, or I saw you on this. And I'm seeing it, everywhere. And so I'm grateful for that. All right, family. So we'll see you all tomorrow morning. We're going to try to dive in a little bit deeper into the data behind some of these, the senior stuff we're talking about, to help you really solidify in your mind that this is in fact a viable market for you. Okay. And so we're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep sharing so that our youth and our seniors don't have to worry about being neglected by the government, because they're both cared for by each other and by our community. All right. If you have not registered your commemorative Elijah coin, be sure and do so. We are about to send out a message for an upcoming event that's going to the coin holders first. And if you're not a registered coin holder, meaning you don't go to the website, you got to go down to the bottom. It's going to say register your coin. I'm going to tell you what you need and how to do it. And you can go out there and get it registered. If you don't do that, then you're not going to be among the first to get that information. And the way we're structuring these next two events, it's going to be a huge advantage if you're already a coin holder. Okay. When you're thinking about the house is very intimate. And so it's not, even though it's quote unquote, those houses are called house museums in the classification, but it's not museum size, right? It's very intimate, living room type of talks, chats, events. And you're going to want to be on that list in order to learn about it. So go out there, register your coin. If you don't have one, you can go to that same website, sajdahhouse.com or elijahmuhammadhouse.com. Get your coin or register, because you're going to want to do that. We got some big things coming up this summer. We're also going to be doing through my brand that manages the home. We're going to be doing some master classes for the builders in our community, bringing in some guests, having some deep conversations like what we talked about now. We're going to be doing this on a regular basis. Okay. And you're going to want to be registered, because even when we start talking about having these kinds of private chats, things that may not be televised, as you ain't going to hear about it, where we really sitting down, having a think tank and talking about what to do in our community, you're going to want to be on that database. Because if you're not in that database, I should say, you're not going to know about. Y'all, the revolution will not be televised. So go out there, register. We did not listen to our elders the first time and focus on ownership. Let's get a group of us who are willing to hear it and willing to do it, willing to roll up their sleeves and be builders, workers, and owners. We didn't listen the first time, and now the bubble's being busted. The rug is being pulled out from up under us. Let's listen this time. All right, we'll see you all tomorrow, family. Excuse my voice. I'll get it together. It's allergy season, but it's all right. We keep striving. Nobody can calculate our survival skills. All right, love you all. Peace and blessings. Be a friend. Tell a friend. Make sure you like and subscribe.